Nobody knows.
16 miles in an open boat. 16 miles to freedom across the dark bay. The Freedom Run began at 10 o'clock on a June night in 1860. 6 slaves, men and women, found their way to the Maryland shore. They had a boat and planned to cross the Delaware Bay following the beam of the Cape May lighthouse. They hadn't gotten far when 5 white men in another boat attacked them. Hit with oars, then pierced by bullets, the determined freedom seekers still made their escape. Rowing fiercely, despite their wounds, they made it across the dark waters and landed on the Jersey shore.
The young women were very sick. The men were tried to their last extremity. They were not far from Cape May Lighthouse. William Still, Philadelphia Regional Coordinator of the Underground Railroad.
In the decade before the Civil War, many people fleeing slavery in Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia made their way to freedom across the Delaware Bay. But they were not the only ones coming to Cape May, a very popular seaside resort at the southern tip of New Jersey. Steamers brought Southern planters escaping the summer heat, and abolitionists and Underground Railroad leaders from Philadelphia. Cape May was the meeting place of North and South. They came for the ocean and the large, luxurious hotels, but there were tense times too. Fights broke out among slavers and abolitionists and the hundreds of free blacks working in the hotels. Into this scene walked 30-year-old Harriet Tubman, a freedom seeker from Maryland's eastern shore. She came to earn money to return to Maryland to free her family and friends.
I was free, but there was no one to welcome me to the land of freedom. I was a stranger in a strange land. And my home, after all, was down in the old cabin quarter with the old folks and my sisters and brothers. But to this solemn resolution I came. I was free, and they should be free also. Harriet Tubman.
Despite the price on her head, Tubman worked as a cook in Cape May the summer of 1852, perhaps earlier as well. In the fall of 1852, she left Cape May. She crossed the bay, rescued 9 people on the eastern shore, and led them to freedom in Canada. At the time, Cape May was alive with discussions and meetings of leading Philadelphia abolitionists and Underground Railroad leaders. There was the remarkable Stephen Smith, who had bought his freedom and become one of the richest black men in the country. Because of him, hundreds of enslaved people reached freedom, traveling in the secret compartments he built in his railroad cars. He built a summer home on Lafayette and Franklin Street. Right beside Smith's home was the Banneker House Hotel. Free black abolitionists from Philadelphia stayed there, and in its rooms they wrote resolutions denouncing slavery, which were circulated by Frederick Douglass in his newspaper. Across the street from Smith's house was a white Baptist church known for issuing anti-slavery resolutions. One prominent member was Joseph Leach, the local newspaper editor who reported on slave escapes to Cape May. "We glory in the spunk of our ebony friends," he wrote. Another longtime summer visitor to Cape May was a white Unitarian minister from Philadelphia, William Furness, who was known as a leading abolitionist. Furness called the fight over slavery a battle between barbarism and civilization. In the years after the Civil War, especially in the first half of the 20th century, the area around Smith's house became a vibrant African-American community. In the 1960s and 70s, Cape May restored its distinctive Victorian architecture and history. But at the same time, it lost much of its African-American history, particularly through urban renewal. The Stephen Smith House barely survived, saved only by an emergency telegram from its owner to President Lyndon Johnson. Today, there is an effort by concerned Cape May residents to resurrect that history. The National Park Service has recently recognized Cape May's African American past, accepting 2 Cape May contributions related to the Underground Railroad into its Network to Freedom. They are the Cape May Underground Railroad Trolley Tour and the Stephen Smith House. The Tubman Museum is key to this revival. Macedonia Baptist Church and the Mullock family, owners of the historic Chalfont Hotel, plan to showcase this past in the Harriet Tubman Museum, scheduled to open in 2020. We need your help to create the Harriet Tubman Museum. It will be located in the 19th century home of Quaker businessman George Howell, which is now owned by Macedonia Church and in need of restoration. The plan is to create several display rooms and a large 2-story exhibit area, as well as 2 meeting rooms. The Harriet Tubman Museum is at the center of a neighborhood that tells more than 150 years of the African American struggle for civil rights and Cape May's part in it. The Howell House is across the street from Stephen Smith's home and steps from the AME church Smith founded. It's also next door to a relic of segregation, the Franklin Street School. Long vacant, city and county officials now plan to convert it into a library and community center, a place of inclusion. Each of these buildings is at a pivotal point of preservation. The Tubman Museum will be an anchor in this effort to create a lasting reminder and tribute to Cape May's fight for freedom and civil rights. We need your help to create the Harriet Tubman Museum.